morning! So today I'm going to be giving my initial thoughts on the book, The Feminine in Fairy Tales. The Feminine in Fairy Tales is a book written by Marie Louise Von Franz and is actually a series of notes from lectures she gave in 1958 to 1959. So I was inspired to read this book because I saw a lot of people recommending it after I read Women Who Run with the Wolves, as the authors have a similar philosophy that I was intrigued by. So the author starts off the book by saying that Western women seem to have a bit of an identity crisis because we really don't have many feminine metaphysical icons we can look up to other than the Christian Virgin Mary. And so to combat this idea, the author started to look into fairy tales to find characters that could be more examples of women's divinity. One interpretation that I got from the book kind of explained to me that because we lack these female figures, unless we are actively seeking them out, we as women become uncertain of ourselves and we fall into certain traps where we become versions of ourselves that appeal to men's ideals. We work to become the perfect woman for the man that we're interested in because of the way that our society is constructed. That's what we've been taught, and so that's what happens to us. We don't really feel this natural confidence in our womanhood that other cultures seem to have, because those cultures have divine images of women on equal playing fields with the male divinity. Instead, we end up regressing because of what we've been taught. The author then tells us that with the rise of women's empowerment, and like I said, this is in the 50s, so this is a little bit further back, we have sort of started to see women take themselves back. And now, reading this here in 2025, I actually agree quite a bit, although I would argue that we still haven't taken ourselves back enough, if that makes sense. One of the aspects of this book that I really liked so far was the author talking about how much the world really devalues the feminine side, the feminine goddess, as she likes to put it, especially the darker side of that. And I'm inclined to agree. I think that femininity has always had a tendency to make weak-minded people uncomfortable, especially that darker, more powerful, also imperfect side of it. The author also talks about how when we're young and teenagers and adolescents, we're kind of allowed to develop our femininity more. But as we start to get older, the world kind of shuts that down and doesn't let you do that. It's sort of like as we're starting to grow, you can't grow too much or you'll make someone uncomfortable. And that logic and that mindset leaves so many people stunted. Another part of this book that I really did enjoy is when the author is talking about how sometimes women can be too feminine to where they grow passive and gentle, and eventually they have this big breakout moment where they are sick of kind of living for everybody else and they kind of go over the edge because of that. It's very reminiscent of something that I read in Women Who Run with the Wolves, where they talked about how we as women can feel so trapped in our situations, and then once we're freed, we're not really sure what to do with ourselves, so we end up going wild for a little bit. And the thing that I learned from reading this book so far and taking that stuff that I'd read from the other book is that femininity is really kind of a balance, and it's not something that you can train as much as you can nurture. It's a natural balance that's achieved by prioritizing yourself and making sure that you're good, you're taking care of yourself, and essentially making sure that your cup is filled before you can fill anyone else's. So far, I've really enjoyed this book. I will give a note, though, it can be a little bit of a struggle to follow at times because it essentially is lecture notes. So there's moments where you may read something that has a hint of sarcasm, but it doesn't really come across. I'm a little under halfway through so far, and I think it's interesting. It's not really what I expected going into it. I think I expected it to be laid out a little bit cleaner. I really didn't know that it was notes going into it. But so far, I'm into it. I like the ideas that have been discussed, and it kind of opens up my brain a little bit. I always like things like that.